Gerald Levert was more than an R&B legend. Behind the unforgettable voice and chart-topping hits was a man whose private life left behind unanswered questions. Despite his deep relationships with women like Kandi and Mickey Howard, Gerald never married, fueling years of speculation. What kept him from taking that step? And what did he mean when he said, "There can only be one star in the family"? At the time of his tragic passing at just 40 years old, Gerald's generosity, struggles, and choices had shaped a legacy both brilliant and bittersweet. His net worth, the legal fights over his estate, and the truths about his final years paint a picture few really knew. The mystery of Gerald Levert's personal life continues to captivate, and what's finally come to light might surprise you. The truth about Gerald Levert's love life, Kandi, Mickey Howard, and more. Gerald Levert wasn't just known for creating timeless hits. He had a reputation as a true ladies' man. Before his untimely passing, Gerald's name was linked to several women. Those who knew him said he truly loved the ladies, and the ladies certainly loved him back. Of course, not every romance can be covered. Gerald's life was filled with stories, but what's remembered most are his significant and public relationships. As for whispers about brief flings or messy rumors, like the one claiming he played a role in a certain gospel singer's divorce, that's best left alone. There simply isn't time to recount every chapter of Gerald's love life, especially those that faded quietly into the background. In his memoir, co-written with his father, Gerald described what he looked for in a woman. He admired someone who took care of herself, hair done, nails done, always put together. To him, that showed respect for herself. He had a particular fondness for lips, saying they were perfect for kissing, biting, and all the tenderness and passion that came before, during, and after love. He enjoyed the simple, intimate things: bubble baths for two, showers shared, lights on or off, soft music in the background, just not his dad's songs. And the most romantic thing a woman could say to him? A simple, genuine, "Are you okay?" Because that showed real care. One of Gerald's earliest and most meaningful relationships was with actress and comedian Kym Whitley. They grew up together in Shaker Heights, Ohio, starting as childhood friends. Over time, friendship turned into something deeper. Kym later said Gerald was her first true love, and she inspired Levert's 1988 hit Addicted to You. Their bond wasn't without challenges. Kym's parents disapproved of her dating a musician, but she followed her heart. Gerald, for his part, supported her dream of going to Hollywood, but made it clear that if they were together, there could only be one star in the relationship. He wanted a partner who reflected his idea of home, someone like his mother, a homemaker. The push and pull of ambition and expectation led to several breakups, but through it all, Gerald and Kym remained close friends. According to Kym Whitley, years later, comedian and actress Monique expressed interest in Gerald and asked Kym for her blessing before pursuing anything. Kym agreed, wanting Gerald to find happiness. Gerald would often joke about a night at Monique's house when he got drunk and she locked the gates, refusing to let him leave. Whatever truly happened between Gerald and Monique, the relationship didn't blossom into anything serious. But like many of Gerald's connections, they stayed friends. Kym also shared in an interview with TV1 that she and Gerald had once made a sweet pact. If neither of them was married by the time they turned 50, they would marry each other. With Kym being 5 years older, no one is certain whether they planned to wait for his 50th or hers. Sadly, Gerald never lived to see that milestone. Back in the mid to late 1980s, Gerald met R&B singer Mickey Howard. Mickey later described Gerald as sweet, attractive, and thoughtful. They bonded quickly, partly over their shared connection to the Jehovah's Witness faith. Gerald was raised in it, and Mickey was studying at the time. Their romance began before they ever collaborated musically, but soon they were creating songs together, including their 1987 duet, That's What Love Is. Mickey cared deeply for Gerald, but people close to him urged him to distance himself. Some disapproved because she was a mother of two and discouraged him from marrying her. Over time, even Gerald began echoing those concerns, telling Mickey he didn't want a ready-made family. In the made-for-TV film Love Under New Management, based on Mickey's life, there's a scene where she discovers Gerald's stash of prescription pills. When questioned, Gerald calmly explained what each was for and insisted everything was fine. But later that night, Mickey found him passed out on the bathroom floor. Thankfully, she managed to wake him. Concerned, she later called Gerald's mother to tell her what happened. When Gerald overheard the call, he became furious. According to Mickey, their relationship ended not long after that incident. Mickey Howard shared with Soul Express that less than 2 months after her breakup with Gerald, she married someone else. But it seemed that marriage wasn't a happy or lasting one. Not long after, she and Gerald reconnected to record a duet for her third album. According to Soul Express, Mickey was pregnant by another man during that recording process. Despite the ups and downs, Mickey and Gerald remained part of each other's lives. Mickey later confirmed what Kim Whitley had also revealed. Gerald wanted a woman who would stay at home, someone who reminded him of his mother. He encouraged Mickey to be more of a traditional woman, not someone caught up in the spotlight or the fast pace of the world. Even as he kept ties with Kim and shared this complicated connection with Mickey, Gerald continued to charm audiences everywhere. Known affectionately as Teddy Bear, he was beloved by fans. During his performances, it wasn't unusual for the stage to be showered with undergarments. His appeal was undeniable. In 1990, Gerald became a father to 2 children with 2 different women, a daughter named Carlicia and a son named Lamika. The 2 were born just 3 days apart, which naturally led to what Gerald himself called baby mama drama. Through it all, Kim stayed supportive. She was the one Gerald called when he needed to vent about tensions with the mothers of his children or issues with his girlfriends. On her podcast, Kim even shared that Gerald was engaged at one point and often called her to complain about his fiancé, though the identity of that fiancé remains unknown. Mickey, too, stayed in the picture. She told Storm Monroe that she and Gerald would see each other whenever either of them was in town, suggesting their relationship operated on a quiet, don't ask, don't tell understanding. Their children even played together and enjoyed each other's company. Mickey had nothing but kind words for the mothers of Gerald's children, saying, "He picked some really fine women, strong, with integrity, and really nice. I love them, I do." But temptation followed Gerald wherever he went. On and off the road, his life remained full of distractions, and in 1998, he fathered his 3rd child, a son named Cameron. By 2002, Gerald had released his album The G-Spot, and the music video for his single Funny featured Kareen Steffans as his on-screen love interest. Many would later know Kareen by her infamous nickname, Superhead. Whether anything happened between her and Gerald during that time remains a mystery. There was plenty of speculation, but no clear answers. In February 2003, Gerald crossed paths with singer-songwriter Kandi from Escape. At the time, Kandi was balancing a busy career while raising her 6-month-old daughter, Riley. Gerald and Kandi quickly formed a deep and meaningful bond. That same year, they even collaborated on a song titled It's You. The lyrics of the track gave a glimpse into their connection. In her verse, Kandi sang about loving Gerald's stank, cocky attitude and how much she appreciated the way he embraced her child. Gerald's soulful voice reflected his feelings, too, as he sang about how Kandi wasn't fazed by his baby mama drama because she had her own challenges. He poured out affection in lines like, "It's you. The way your mama treat me like her own. The way you came and made my house a home. I love everything about you." Despite the heartfelt lyrics, the song never made it onto an official release and stayed tucked away for years. Sources say Gerald and Kandi's relationship lasted around 2 years. As for why things ended, Reports from straight from the A pointed to a familiar pattern. Gerald wanted a partner who would stay at home and focus on family, while Kandi was driven by her career and ambitions. Their paths simply didn't align. Still, there was no bitterness between them. After the breakup, Kandi stayed connected to Gerald's children and remained on good terms with his family. In 2005, Gerald made an appearance on MTV's My Super Sweet 16 to celebrate his daughter Carlisia's birthday. But looking back, Gerald regretted it. In his co-authored book, he admitted that the show painted the wrong picture, making it seem like he had spent $2 million on the party. The exaggerated portrayal sparked frustration among the mothers of his other children, who felt their kids weren't receiving the same attention or generosity. Gerald spoke openly about how his strained relationships with the mothers of his children often spilled over and affected his bond with his kids. He recalled one instance where a mother of one of his children called his own mother, criticizing Gerald and claiming she had no control over him. If there was one thing Gerald couldn't stand, it was people dragging his mama into his personal mess. That same year, 2005, the year he and Kandi Burruss ended their relationship, Gerald tried to prioritize his health. He enrolled in a fitness and weight loss program. But while working on himself, he suffered a setback. He fell and ruptured his Achilles tendon, leaving him in a full-length cast. According to his unsung episode, Gerald was carrying a heavy burden beyond his own physical pain. He had not only family, but friends, acquaintances, and even random people depending on him financially. He was known for his generosity, helping people pay their bills and keeping many on his payroll. Because so many relied on him, and because his main source of income was touring, Gerald rushed his recovery and returned to performing before his body was ready. Loved ones described how Gerald lived in near-constant pain during this time, relying on both prescription and over-the-counter medications just to sleep. But it was also during this difficult chapter that Gerald began to reflect deeply on his choices. He started to see the impact of his mistakes and found himself longing for more meaningful, genuine connections with the people he loved. On an episode of her podcast, Kim Whitley shared that Gerald once confided in her about his biggest regret: having 3 children with 3 different women. He told Kim he wished he'd made smarter choices. Gerald echoed this reflection in the book he co-wrote with his father, admitting that in his younger years, he'd been selfish. He wanted the freedom to come and go as he pleased, without considering how it affected the women in his life or his children. Gerald also admitted that for a long time, he was so focused on making money that he tuned out anything or anyone who wasn't talking about business. But as he worked on the book, his mindset shifted. He realized life wasn't just about chasing success. It was about showing up for his children and being present for his family. He admired the happy marriages of 2 of his siblings and started longing for that kind of stability for himself. Reflecting on his choices, Gerald wrote that he wished he had waited until marriage before becoming intimate. What troubled him most was that his children were scattered across the country, and he had little control as their mothers moved them around and brought other men into their lives. In his words, "I get mad and wish there was a law. A woman shouldn't be able to just take the kids away from their father." In November 2006, Gerald and his father, Eddie, traveled to South Africa for a performance. During the trip, Gerald was bitten by something on his back and needed medical attention. When they returned to the U.S., Gerald didn't seem well. Despite the cold weather, he was sweating heavily. He went to see a doctor, was given medication, and sent home. But things would soon take a tragic turn. Just a few nights later, on November 10, 2006, Gerald Levert was found unresponsive in his bed. He was rushed to the hospital, but tragically, he was pronounced dead at just 40 years old. The cause of his passing was ruled an accidental overdose of prescription and over-the-counter medications. In the book Gerald co-wrote with his father, Eddie Levert shared the heartbreak of losing his son without Gerald ever having found a woman to truly share his life with. Kandi Burruss seemed to have been Gerald's last serious relationship, and though he remained close with many of his exes, Gerald was unattached at the time of his death. Kandi continued to stay involved in the lives of Gerald's children. She spoke lovingly of his son, Lamika, even referring to him as one of her own. When Kandi moved on with Ashley A.J. Jewell, who had children from previous relationships, she maintained her bond with the Levert family. Kandi and A.J. were briefly engaged, but they ended things in 2008. Sadly, more heartache followed when A.J. died in 2009 after an altercation outside a nightclub. Despite the loss, Kandi kept close ties with A.J.'s children too. When Kandi later met her husband, Todd Tucker, she admitted feeling nervous about how he'd handle her ongoing connection to her ex's children. But Todd embraced the situation, proving to be supportive and kind, and earning the children's approval as well. Even Gerald's former flame, Monique, felt that love from his circle. During her public battle with Netflix, both Kandi and Gerald's son Lamika shared kind and encouraging messages for her. Mickey Howard, too, continues to speak fondly of Gerald and his kids. In 2022, Kandi finally released the long-shelved duet she and Gerald recorded nearly 2 decades earlier, a touching reminder of the bond they once shared. Gerald may have left this world too soon, never realizing his dream of marriage, but the love he gave left a lasting mark on the women who knew him and on the families they built around him. What is Gerald Levert's net worth? Gerald Levert left behind not only a legacy of timeless R&B music, but also a net worth estimated at $5 million at the time of his death in 2006. Known for his soulful voice, heartfelt lyrics, and dynamic stage presence, Gerald built his fortune through decades of hard work in the music industry as a singer, songwriter, and producer. Born in Cleveland, Ohio in July 1966, Gerald grew up immersed in music. His father, Eddie Levert, was the legendary lead singer of the O'Jays, and Gerald often traveled with the band as a child. Inspired by that environment, Gerald formed the group Levert in 1984 with his brother Sean Levert and friend Mark Gordon. By 1986, they released their debut album, I Get Hot, and their success only grew from there. Their 1987 album, The Big Throwdown, went gold, peaking at number 3 on the U.S. R&B chart and number 32 on the Billboard 200. Levert produced multiple chart-topping hits, including Casanova, Addicted to You, Just Coolin', with Heavy D, and Baby I'm Ready. Beyond Levert, Gerald found massive success with the supergroup LSG alongside Keith Sweat and Johnny Gill. Their debut album, Levert Sweat Gill, 1997, went double platinum, reaching number 2 on the U.S. R&B chart and number 4 on the Billboard 200. The album's standout single, My Body, soared to number 1 on the R&B chart and cracked the top 5 on the Billboard Hot 100. Gerald also thrived as a solo artist, releasing 10 solo studio albums that further boosted his earnings. He garnered accolades including a Grammy Award, a BET Award, an NAACP Image Award, and 2 Soul Train Awards. While detailed records of Gerald's annual salary aren't widely available, his wealth stemmed from album sales, touring, songwriting royalties, and producing credits. His work with Levert, LSG, and as a solo act kept him in demand throughout the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s. Even after his passing, Gerald's music continues to generate respect, admiration, and ongoing royalties, ensuring that his voice lives on. Legal tug-of-war erupts over Gerald Levert's will. After Gerald Levert's untimely passing in November 2006, a legal battle began over how his estate should be divided. The beloved R&B singer left behind at least $5 million in assets. This included 2 homes, a pair of Mercedes-Benz cars, jewelry, clothing, furniture, securities, and bank accounts. What hadn't yet been appraised were his publishing rights and music royalties, which were expected to make up a significant portion of his estate. At the center of the dispute was Anthony Gibson, Gerald's cousin and longtime business manager, who Gerald had named as executor of his will. Gibson filed papers in March to begin the process of administering the estate. But not everyone was happy with how things were unfolding. Two women, Bridget Pursley and Margaret Amber Hawkins, mothers of Gerald's sons Lamicah and Cameron, claimed they were being left in the dark about key details. They insisted they only wanted to ensure Gerald's children, his rightful heirs, received what was due to them. Gerald's daughter, Carlicia, who was also 17 at the time, was set to inherit from the estate as well. One of the sticking points in court was where the estate proceedings should take place. Gibson pushed for Cuyahoga County Probate Court, arguing that Cleveland was where Gerald spent most of his time for both work and leisure. But lawyers for the mothers pointed to Geauga County, where Gerald owned a home in Newberry Township, the same home where he tragically passed away from an accidental prescription drug overdose. They believed handling the estate there would offer more transparency, especially since, as they claimed, they'd been met with resistance trying to get information about how the will was being carried out. Both women wanted to protect their children's interests. Pursley and her son lived in New Jersey, while Hawkins and Cameron were based in Las Vegas. Despite having children with 3 different women, Gerald had never married, adding another layer of complexity to the fight over his legacy. The tragic truth behind Gerald Levert. Gerald Levert's life was a blend of extraordinary success and quiet heartbreak. A story of a man who gave his all to music, his family, and his fans, but often at the expense of himself. Born into music royalty in Cleveland, Ohio, Gerald was the son of Eddie Levert, the iconic lead singer of the O'Jays. From the time he and his brother Sean were little, they lived between two worlds, the normalcy of home and the chaos of life on the road. During school breaks, they toured with their father, seeing things that no child should witness. Eddie admitted to Ebony magazine that despite hiring people to care for them, Gerald and Sean were often left alone, exposed to the wild side of show business. "They saw me do some things. They saw me out partying," Eddie confessed. For Gerald, it wasn't just the wildness he remembered, it was the music. He told the LA Times years later that being on tour was when he knew, without a doubt, that he wanted to be a singer. In their teens, Gerald, Sean, and their friend Mark Gordon formed Levert. They wrote songs in the family basement, determined to succeed on their own merit rather than rely on Eddie's connections. Rejected at first for sounding too much like the O'Jays, they finally broke through with their 1986 album Bloodline, which featured the hit Pop, 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 Goes My Mind. The success continued with Casanova, and soon Levert was topping the charts, winning Soul Train awards and earning Grammy nominations. But fame took its toll early. At just 21, Gerald opened up in a 1987 LA Times interview about how crushing the demands of stardom had become. The reporter described Gerald as looking half asleep, desperate for rest. Gerald didn't hide how he felt. "Somebody please take it. Save me from all these hassles," he pleaded. "Being known is a pain. I'd rather be unknown." He reflected on how his father had warned him about fame's darker side. But Gerald admitted he never thought it would be this hard. At the end of the interview, he even asked, exhausted, "Are you sure you don't want to switch jobs with me?" Behind the spotlight, Gerald carried the emotional and financial burdens of his entire family. In I Got Your Back, the book he co-wrote with his father, he wrote about how everyone leaned on him and Eddie, not just for money, but for emotional support too. What Gerald craved was simple: someone to ask him how he was doing, not just reach out when they needed something. Despite the pressure, Gerald kept going. Levert released gold albums like Just Coolin', 1988, and Rope a Dope Style, 1990, and Gerald found solo success with Private Line in 1991, featuring the heartfelt duet Baby Hold On to Me with his dad. He later formed the supergroup LSG with Keith Sweat and Johnny Gill adding to his achievements. But behind the scenes, Gerald was struggling. He longed for love, stability, and peace. By the time he reunited with Levert to work on new music in 2004, he shared in his book that he was ready to settle down and build a family. He dreamed of marriage, more children, and a quieter life. Tragically, that chance never came. In November 2006, after returning from a tour in South Africa, Gerald fell ill. His father, Eddie, recalled their last conversation. Gerald, upset about family matters, asked his father to call him back. Eddie decided to give him time to cool off, but days later, he got the devastating call. Gerald had been found unresponsive and rushed to the hospital. At just 40 years old, Gerald was gone. The cause of death, an accidental overdose of prescription painkillers and over-the-counter medications. Pneumonia had also weakened his body. Eddie later shared with AP News the guilt he carried for not calling his son back. "I just pray that I'll get a chance to see him again and see that great big smile." Gerald Levert's journey was filled with incredible highs and heartbreaking lows. A gifted artist who gave the world unforgettable music, yet carried burdens that few ever saw. His legacy continues to inspire, and his voice lives on through the songs that touched so many hearts. What do you think was Gerald Levert's most powerful or memorable song? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dives into the lives of iconic artists like Gerald, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. See you next time.